I want to welcome you today to the KFXB show called Connect. We have a new segment called All Things Recovery, and it is hosted by IRCO, Iowa Recovery Rescue Community Organization, which is an organization that has a membership. We're starting and likes to build sober housing, and we have some plans to change the recovery landscape in Iowa. But we're hosting, this is one of the first things we do, we're hosting this show on recovery because there are a lot of wonderful stories of people in recovery. And I know that there are folks that are not comfortable with telling their story, but we need to tell the stories of those that are comfortable with it and those that have overcome it. And so there's a scripture that I love to use, and it is Revelation 12:11. And it says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And that word testimony means a witness. When we overcome things, we are a witness to the power of God in our lives. Right. And we actually overcome by telling it, and we help others to overcome by telling our story. So we know there are people out there right now that are looking for hope, that have problems with substance use disorders and are looking for hope. They're looking for answers. And every time someone is brave enough to come on this show and tell their story, that's someone overcoming, but it's also someone catching their faith and saying, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it. So today we have a new guest, and I'm excited about this new guest. She has a story to tell, and she also works in the arena, the social arena, with substance use disorders, and I want to welcome her to the show. And her name is Michelle Sheridan. So welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
I've known Michelle for quite a while. She's a great Christian lady, great mom, great person, and she's got a great story to tell. So we're going to start out by letting her just do a little talking about her childhood. She come from a middle class childhood, and there were a few obstacles, and she'll move into really the things that started to frame her life for when she was a small child. So Michelle.
Okay. Well, first I'd like to say, like every family, no family is perfect.
Right.
And I've heard multiple times that people always try to do the best they can with what they know. And I think that's very, very true. I wasn't raised in a family that necessarily knew God, but they had the belief that, you know, being a good person and things like that were very important. We were very nature driven. I did in my family have different things with, I would say, alcohol abuse. And different types of trying to think of the word
trauma
here. Different trauma, yeah. Growing up, I had different types of trauma, and then also just, like I said, different types of alcohol or substance abuse things, whether it was in my immediate family or family around my immediate family. So there was a lot of that impacted my family and my outlook.
Yeah, you talked a lot, Michelle talked a lot about a lot of upheaval, divorces and
right.
Substance use disorders, like she said, and new family members put in your life, a lot of changes and a lot of upheaval.
Right.
Kind of a rocky road growing up that kind of set a course for you early.
Right. I think that on the outside, especially in a middle class family, things can look very in order, very perfect, but underneath it's not always so. And again, that's not because, you know, parents don't love you or anything like that, but I think that whether you're talking about addiction or substance use, it definitely knows no social economic boundaries.
It's not discriminatory at all.
Right, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
You had talked about, you know, your parents and some of the things that kind of sets your journey in life. Sometimes parents have a lot of problems. They may have many spouses over the course of a child's life, or they drop out of their life, or they have SUDs, you know, and they dealt with, and that really affects the children in a big way.
Right.
And so I think in talking to Michelle in previous interview, sometimes environments like that can be very oppressive for a child, where they don't become a participant in life. They become more of a bystander, an observant member of society, more than engaging, because they just have a very stifling childhood.
Right. I know when we had spoken before, we had talked about, and my husband even kids me about being so observant. You know, how'd you catch this, or how'd you catch that? And I think part of that does come from my childhood, and just being very aware of everything that's going on, moods, particular behaviors, and things like that, and just being, you know, acknowledge them and kind of everything that's going on around them. So
I know you said when you were six years old there was a divorce, and then you talked about in high school you were very shy, and a lot of that comes from, you know, our childhood. I don't know of anybody that's had a perfect childhood. You know, that's a real rarity in life.
Right.
But you had also talked about you were shy in high school, and then because of your upbringing, it kind of became a gateway for drugs, alcohol, whatever. They become a gateway. And for a lot of kids, I mean, even when I grew up, boy, in high school, everybody smoked cigarettes, at least trying it, you know. And even cigarettes can be, of course, today it's vaping, can be a gateway for kids to get involved in it.
Right. Yes, I was very shy and quiet. I became very much a people pleaser, trying just to make everyone happy, do what I thought everyone wanted me to do, and not cause any trouble. And so I think when high school came about, you know, getting into that age, probably 16, 17, and coming around, you know, other kiddos where, you know, there was alcohol and things like that available. You know, when you start driving and things like that, you're not, you have more of that freedom. You have that independence. You have that time that you're not really being
monitored,
watched. Yes. And so when I did try alcohol and things like that for the first time, I think, for one, like a lot of kiddos, they have no idea what they're doing. And it was just 0 to 100 really quick. And so, yeah, there was a time I remember that my mom says that I probably should have been taken to the hospital, just with the amount of alcohol and the type of alcohol that I drank. And now looking back, knowing what I know, probably the alcohol poisoning and things like that. And so I thank God that, you know, I didn't, that it didn't end up worse than what it was. But so there's obviously situations in my, you know, even that short period of time, you know, when I was in high school, that so many times that something bad could have happened.
So what do you think that you were looking for, or you were finding by doing alcohol and getting into drugs or whatever? What were you looking for that?
I think there's a lot of different things. Probably one was escape. I think that's a huge one when people turn to drugs or alcohol. It's an escape mechanism from reality or stress or being shy. You know, I was shy. So that allowed me to kind of not overthink everything and not necessarily be worrying about things. And I think at that time, that was appealing to me, and it kind of let me
let your hair down, in a
Yes.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, yep. So I would say probably that.
And you talked about how it was self-medicating, some of the things that you went through and numbing the pain of what you went through earlier on in life.
Yeah, I think in general people, well, I don't know, we probably don't need to get into that now, but I think things like drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, things like that, not that they always are, but they're very much a learned behavior. When you have, you know, stress or anxiety or trauma, people learn how to self-medicate, you know, with things like drugs, alcohol, even nicotine. And I think that's definitely what I did. Like I said, when I did drink, it was not a little amount. I mean, it
was
would
for
just,
a reason.
Yeah, yeah. It was just, and it was real quick.
And
Yeah.
you had made that statement that once it started, it got bad. Once you got into that, you know, and felt your freedom and maybe fitting in or peer
Yeah.
pressure, it just really got bad.
Yeah,
from that.
and I think it's hard because in high school it was available, and there were so many kiddos that, at least that I knew, not that they all were, but that were doing the same thing or had access to it, or knew people that were buying it for them, or, you know, getting it from parents' house or whatever. And so, yeah.
Well, then you talked that you became a mom, and that
I
really
did.
kind of opened your eyes.
I did. I, right out of high school, well, a little bit right out of high school, but yeah, I became a mom to my first son, Mason. And I think as soon as I found out that I was pregnant with him, a lot changed. You know, that's kind of, you're growing something inside of you, and I wanted that to be perfect. So, sorry.
That's all right.
So, yeah. So I obviously wasn't drinking or smoking or any of that stuff while I was pregnant, and kind of started down the motherhood role. Yeah.
And that went really well for a while.
Yes.
And you hit another bump in the road.
Yes, it went it went really well for a while until you know, again, I was young. Things in my, you know, I was married and newlyweds and stuff like that, and with just different things in both of our parents' lives that were going on, not having support. And, you know, like any marriage, you start to have situations or questions or arguments, and not having necessarily the support to, you know, well, what do we do here? What do we do now? And again, it's, and then also with us just getting ready to turn 21, and it seemed that was a means that would help, you know. And when everyone around you is, oh, on Friday nights we'll go out for a drink after work, or we'll go, you know, it just seems so acceptable to do that, whether it's on the weekends or a couple nights of the week. You know, mommies need break time, dads need to hang out with the guys, and so it's very much just pushed as acceptable way to end the work day, end the work week, to, you know, get rid of your stress, to help forget about, you know, marriage problems for a little bit. And so I think that's kind of where it kind of all
started. But once you learn that behavior, and then things got better and you stopped, but then when trouble came, you went right back to that. And I think that's true for a lot of people.
Right.
Especially when there's trouble, they're going to turn to SUDs of some type. Not everybody, but I'm just saying people that had a previous history of it, it would be very easy to go to that.
Right.
And
so definitely.
I know you got a divorce, and so then it caused you to, you know, get back into it again, and then down the road you talked about meeting your second husband,
and again, that was just during a not good time, you know, and going through a divorce. It was not a good divorce. And, you know, the nights that my son was with his dad, it was, you know, sad and it was lonely. And I wasn't necessarily dealing with things well. Like I said, I had stuff in my my family home that was also going on at that time a lot. And you know, and I was 21, and that was my friends. Oh, just come out for a little bit. Oh, let's go dancing. Oh, you know, you need to relax. You know, I don't want you to think about that. And so it was very easy just to do that, you know.
But you had talked like recovery, which happens for a lot of people, come over the course of years.
Right.
Your course talking to you was kind of up and down and up and down.
Right.
And, you know, what finally got you over the hump, over that to stop riding the roller coaster?
Right. Well, and we'll fast forward past a lot of life stuff. But it was definitely God. I think, you know, whether it's our kids or different times that we acknowledge that this is not okay, or this behavior is getting out of control, or I'm not happy, there's something missing. You know, when I really, and I had God in my life for about a decade before that, but I knew that there was something more, something deeper. And when I ended up coming into that relationship with God, and just really feeling that deeper presence, and I just remember feeling such a weight lift off, and just the presence of God, His love. And afterwards, I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I was on the right track, and I knew that I felt Him. And I knew there was strength and hope in feeling that. And I knew that it was going to be different, but I knew that that I was heading somewhere good. And I ultimately wanted that for my family. I'd always wanted, like everyone does, right? You know, the perfect family, the happy family, a functional family, a family full of love. And so as my relationship with God grew, I could see that becoming more and more of a possibility.
You talked about the things in your subconscious mind that was kind of hidden come to your conscious mind. You know, like sometimes when you come to God, you don't really realize a lot of things. And I really believe it's God revealing things like, wow, or the Word of God, this isn't a good thing for you. That's why that Word of God, which is an owner's manual for us and a love letter from God, is a good thing to know because there's so much wisdom in it.
Right.
But I thought that was an interesting point you made.
Right. And we don't know. There's so many things as we're growing up that either through learned behavior from our families or even friends' families, media, TV shows, you know, we have all of these things that are kind of built into who we are, how we develop things, how we behave when certain things happen, our mindsets. And I think as I came to God, I described it as an onion. You know, all of these layers and these things kind of built in between these layers. And as I got closer with God and my relationship with God developed, I was able to kind of peel back those layers and see, you know, this is unhealthy. And, you know, there are so many things with addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, that are really at a root level that really leads someone up here to the drugs or the alcohol or, you know, whatever it is. And there's these things down here that we really have to look at and work on. And God helped me really identify and reveal those things so we could work on them together.
So wouldn't you say, Michelle, I think it's so important when people get to know Jesus that they develop a prayer life.
Yes.
It's just paramount that you have devotions. A lot of people get into devotions, and also a prayer life. The Bible says,
Right.
they that call upon the Lord shall be delivered.
That's
Not
right.
might be, shall be delivered.
Right.
So the more someone seeks after God, you know, the more the probability that they're going to lead a victorious life. And
Right.
you recognize that. You got into a relationship with God. You got into
Right.
prayer. You got into knowing that something's missing and I want more of God.
Right.
And it's God,
Absolutely.
you know. Also, Michelle, you worked, and I find this very interesting, but she worked in a variety of social arenas. And I'd like you to kind of talk about them. You also talked about, you know, Michelle's past dictated her future to what we are today. And many times our sufferings become our ministries.
Right.
And I think that's true of Michelle. But I know, Michelle, you work with youth.
Yes, it's one of the things. I feel like I work with everybody, but yes, I work with youth. Right now, a couple things that I do are with third graders in their classrooms, and talking about, well, it's basically prevention, right? So talking about self-esteem, drugs, alcohol, making decisions, being a good friend, things like that, kind of at that a level that they can understand it, but it's all prevention.
And in third grade.
Yes.
That's an awesome thing, because you hear about youth or you hear about adults,
Right.
but those same folks, if they could have been approached in third grade and say,
Right.
you know, drugs and alcohol aren't any good for
Right.
you, you'll avoid a lot of trouble.
Right.
And getting down to their level, which sounds like what you do.
Oh, I love it. They're so cute. And then another thing that I do would be the alcohol diversion. And so if a kiddo under the age of 21, right, legal age of drinking, were to get in trouble with their first alcohol incident, and they get in trouble, juvenile court system then would refer them to taking a diversion class, which is a few hours, and we talk about the development of the brain and how it's not done developing until the age of 25, and how things like drug and alcohol affect the frontal lobe, and just the decisions that they're making, but also how it's affecting the development of their brain. And there's just a lot of knowledge given to them. Knowledge is power, right? You know,
Yes.
some of these kids come in and they don't know. We even talk about different goals they have for the next 6 months, goals they have before they graduate high school, and how drugs and alcohol are going to get in the way of those goals, and
That's
really
good.
stopping and looking at that. And the hopes of that program is that giving them that knowledge, that they leave there with more knowledge and choose then to make better choices. And then hopefully after that, then they don't have any more encounters with drugs or alcohol, and the ability then, I think at 18, to have their record closed, which I think is a great thing. God is a God of second chances, and I think when they are given that knowledge, you hope that it would help them make better decisions.
Absolutely.
In the future.
It's a wise thing to put a little fear in children, what can be some of the consequences of using drugs and alcohol, and some of the things that have happened to people.
Right.
When I was a kid, I walked by the railroad tracks to going home, and they had this movie every year that would just literally grip my heart about these kids that walk the railroad tracks and literally become crippled because of it. But that produced a fear, and I thought about that all the time walking home. Boy, I don't want to be on them railroad tracks and that train's coming. It's the same thing with the drugs and alcohol.
Right.
But you also worked in ladies ministry, which is interesting.
Yes. The ladies at our correctional facility center, probably a little over 4 years, I've gone in there and done Bible studies. We've done different books, curriculums. Also, I think just mentoring them, becoming friends with them, listening to them, talking to them, seeing what they need. And a lot of them I've you know, stayed in contact with after they're out of there, trying to help them in that process. And yeah.
Well, you talked about one of the reasons, some of the things you should think about is, you know, how can I be there for that person? I
Right.
thought that was really great on a mentoring
Right.
standpoint. And what do they need right now?
Right.
You know, what I have learned working with folks in corrections, in the housing projects that the good Lord's allowed me to have, is that, you know, a lot of these folks don't have a very good self-image. And if they find that you believe in them,
Right.
I remember one time, Carol, I told her, I said, what caused a cessation of 11 months of not drinking? And she told me, she said, because you told me you believed in me.
Right.
And you help some of these folks that don't think a lot of themselves in a very dark time in their life. You got a friend for life. They don't ever forget you.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is that they do, and they need to know that someone cares and someone believes in them, and that shows them that there is hope, there is a way out. And
Look into the camera and say that, Michelle. There's some really good words that you need to be repeating right now.
There is hope, and there is a way out. And some of these things are generational. And again, I think just empowering them with knowledge, you know, understanding that this is where you're at now, but what do you need now? And then how can we move forward from there? You know, some of it is just these little steps. But I know that God makes a huge difference in that.
Oh, does he?
And I mean, just changing behaviors, mindsets, and just having that hope in the midst of it, for sure.
Well, this show today, we just want to tell you that there's hope for you. You know, God is there anytime. He's a very present help in time of trouble. And we want you to know that He's there for you today. And that even though your situation seems possible, with God all things are possible. And you can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth you. I want to thank you today, Michelle, for being on the program. She did an excellent job.
Thanks.